The Shadows of Pripyat. Berlin, 2024. Max, Lina, Felix, and Sophie. Names that had become synonymous with thrill-seeking in the digital world. Their YouTube channel, Urban Shadows, had attracted a legion of followers, each eagerly awaiting the next upload where the quartet would delve into the world's most forsaken and ominous places. They had navigated the murky corridors of forgotten bunkers, braved the haunted halls of deserted asylums, and wandered through ghost towns where time seemed to have frozen. Yet nothing could have prepared them for the letter that arrived on a cold autumn morning, as cryptic as it was unnerving. The envelope was nondescript, bearing no return address, its paper yellowed at the edges, hinting at age. Inside, a single sheet contained a terse message. Pripyat awaits. Your passage is arranged. Come alone. The signature was not a name, but an enigmatic spiral symbol, giving the letter an eerie finality. Max, ever the skeptic, was the first to break the silence, his voice laced with disbelief. This has to be a joke, right? He handed the letter to Felix, whose brow furrowed as he read. Pripyat? Felix muttered, the name dripping with the weight of history. That's near Chernobyl, isn't it? Lina leaned in, her curiosity battling with the unease creeping up her spine. No one could just go there. It's restricted. How could this even be possible? Sophie, ever the cynic, shrugged with a dismissive air, yet there was a glint in her eye. Maybe someone's messing with us. But imagine the footage. No one's ever done an overnight in Pripyat. The room buzzed with tension, excitement battling with trepidation. The unknown beckoned, its allure impossible to resist. The decision was unanimous, though shrouded in uncertainty. They would go. 2 weeks later, they found themselves aboard a flight to Ukraine, a mix of excitement and dread coursing through their veins. The arrangements had been eerily smooth, as if some unseen force was guiding their every move. An anonymous benefactor had indeed paved their way, ensuring their passage through bureaucratic hurdles was seamless. Upon landing in Kyiv, a silent, unsmiling driver met them, his instructions stark. No questions, no deviations. The drive to Pripyat was shrouded in a somber silence. The driver, an older man with a face etched by time, barely spoke. His silence hung heavy in the air as they passed through abandoned villages, each house a ghost, its windows dark and hollow, staring into the void. The landscape grew bleaker with each mile until they reached the checkpoint. The guards, clad in military uniforms, inspected their papers with disinterest before waving them through. Not a word was spoken. It was all too easy, too unsettling. By late afternoon, they arrived in Pripyat, the city frozen in time, a haunting testament to the disaster that had swept its inhabitants away overnight. Rusting playgrounds creaked in the wind. Buildings stood as silent sentinels, their windows shattered, as if the city had been abruptly abandoned, left to decay in solitude. Max, always the filmmaker, was entranced by the sight, setting up his camera to capture the eerie beauty. It's like the world just stopped, he murmured, the words barely audible. They spent the day exploring, wandering through the decayed remnants of a lost world. Schools where desks lay askew, apartments where the remnants of daily life gathered dust, the infamous amusement park, its Ferris wheel standing as a grim reminder of what once was. Their cameras recorded it all, the silence, the decay, the haunting remnants of life interrupted. By evening, they were exhausted, yet exhilarated. The city had revealed its secrets, but no more than what the eye could see. No strange occurrences, no hidden dangers, just the silent, haunting remnants of a world left behind. As night draped its heavy curtain over Pripyat, the atmosphere thickened, transforming from eerily peaceful to oppressively sinister. They set up camp in a relatively intact apartment block overlooking the town square. Their plan simple: stay overnight, capture their experiences, and leave at dawn. But as the shadows deepened, an inexplicable unease settled over the group. The wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it more than just the chill of the night. It carried whispers, faint but unmistakable, that seemed to seep into their bones. "Did you hear that?" Felix broke the silence, his voice edged with fear. Max glanced up from his camera, frowning. "Hear what?" I don't know." It sounded like voices. Sophie rolled her eyes, trying to mask her own rising fear. "It's just the wind. This place is creepy enough without us freaking ourselves out." But Felix wasn't convinced. He stared at the window, the darkness beyond impenetrable. It didn't sound like the wind. They tried to shake off the unsettling feeling, but the night had other plans. As they reviewed their footage, Felix froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Guys, look at this." The others gathered around the screen, their breath catching. There, in the footage captured just minutes earlier, a faint, flickering light could be seen in one of the distant buildings. Lina frowned, her heart pounding. "That can't be right. There's no power here." Max, ever the leader, grabbed his flashlight, a determined look on his face. "Let's check it out." Hesitation gripped them, but curiosity, that insatiable beast, won out. They left the relative safety of the apartment, their flashlights slicing through the thick darkness as they made their way toward the mysterious light. The streets were silent, the only sound the crunch of their footsteps on the debris-littered ground. But as they approached the building, the light vanished. "Did you see where it went?" Lina's voice trembled, betraying the fear she tried to suppress. "No," Max replied, shining his flashlight on the entrance, his heart racing. "But it was here." They entered, the air inside colder, more oppressive. The decay was the same as elsewhere in the city, but now it seemed to carry an extra weight, a sense of something lurking just out of sight. "Let's split up," Max suggested, his voice steady, though his heart pounded. "We'll cover more ground." Reluctantly, they agreed. Max and Sophie took the left hallway, while Felix and Lina went right. The silence grew heavier, their footsteps echoing ominously as they ventured deeper into the building. Minutes passed, then an hour, with no sign of the light or anything else. Just as Felix and Lina reached the end of their hallway, a sound stopped them in their tracks. Footsteps, faint but unmistakable, coming from the floor above. Felix turned to Lina, but she was gone. The hallway behind him was empty, as if she had never been there. "Lina," he called, his voice trembling, echoing back at him. But there was no answer. Panic gripped him as he searched frantically, but she had vanished without a trace. Desperation clawing at him. Felix ran back to where they had split up, but Max and Sophie were gone too. He was alone. Max and Sophie moved through the darkened corridors, their nerves fraying with each passing moment. The building was a labyrinth, every turn seeming to lead them deeper into an abyss. Sophie clung to Max's arm, her breath shallow, panic rising. "Max, this is wrong. We need to get out of here." Max nodded, but his mind was too focused on the search to fully grasp her fear. They turned another corner, and suddenly, Sophie was gone. One moment, she had been beside him. The next, vanished into the darkness. "Sophie!" Max shouted, his voice ricocheting off the walls. But the hallway was empty, the darkness suffocating. Panic surged through him as he ran back through the building, calling for his friends, but only silence answered. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness pressing down on him, thick, almost tangible. Finally, he burst outside, gasping for air, but the city had changed. The silence had been replaced by whispers, soft, insidious, echoing from every direction. The once deserted streets were now filled with a sense of impending doom. He ran, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his flashlight flickering weakly as he fled toward the forest that bordered the city. He didn't stop until the whispers faded, the city swallowed by the night behind him. Max stumbled through the forest, terror and confusion clouding his mind. The trees loomed like skeletal sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out as if to snare him. But even as he pushed deeper into the woods, a horrifying realization gripped him. He was not alone. Figures emerged from the shadows, grotesque, twisted things that had once been human. Their skin was taut and pale, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. They moved in eerie silence, surrounding Max, cutting off any chance of escape. He turned to run, but one of the creatures struck him from behind. Pain exploded in his head, and then darkness. When he awoke, Max found himself strapped to a cold metal table in a sterile room. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, the walls lined with ominous medical equipment. His heart thundered as he realized he was in a laboratory, a place of horrors. A figure loomed over him, a man in a lab coat, his face obscured by a surgical mask. He spoke in broken English, his voice devoid of emotion. "You have arrived as planned." The message, it was from us. Max's mind raced, trying to piece together the nightmare. "What do you want?" The doctor's eyes gleamed with a sick satisfaction. "We seek candidates. You will help us create the future." Cold dread washed over Max as the reality of his situation sank in. He struggled against the restraints, but they held firm. The doctor leaned closer, his voice a sinister whisper. "Welcome to your new existence." The last thing Max saw was the glint of a scalpel, the cold steel reflecting the terror in his eyes. His scream echoed through the facility, but there was no one left to hear it. Pripyat remains a ghost town, a grim monument to a past catastrophe. By day, tourists wander its silent streets, drawn by a macabre fascination. But as night falls, the shadows deepen and the whispers return. Few know the true horrors that lie hidden beneath the city's surface. The experiments continue, the search for new candidates relentless. The millions of bones that line the walls are more than mere relics. They are a warning, a testament to an ancient, insatiable hunger that lurks in the darkness, waiting to claim more souls.